This is Woodwords the podcast, a production of the Kansas City Woodworkers Guild, with host Kevin Thomas and producer Chris McCauley. Here's your host, Kevin Thomas.
Greetings everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Kansas City Woodworkers Guild's Woodwords podcast, the podcast. Joining us today is a young man who's become a bit of a celebrity around here. He recently had an article published in Popular Woodworking magazine on building a shaker-inspired sewing counter. He is Kenan Orhan. Kenan, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
I'm going to start you off like we do everybody. How did you get your start in woodworking?
It was kind of, I needed a solution to a problem. I was moving around a lot. Over 5 years, I'd moved from Manhattan, Kansas, to Raleigh, North Carolina, to Boston, Massachusetts, to Colorado Springs, Colorado, and then finally to Kansas City, Missouri. And I have a huge library, but I could only pack the books into boxes, and I couldn't bring my bookshelves, and every time I moved, I had to buy another bookcase and then try and sell it, or unfortunately leave it in a dumpster on my way out of town again. So I kind of wanted to look into maybe making my own bookcase as a way to save money. Unfortunately, there's a tool cost there that isn't really going to save you money. But I sort of just went to the Home Depot in town. I asked for 1x12, had them cut it into a bunch of little pieces, and I sort of just screwed together a real makeshift bookcase that's really ugly. It's still surprisingly together, but that was my first foray into woodworking, and that was about 2 years ago.
About 2 years ago. What brought you to the guild?
Well, it was actually kind of the machine cost. I was really interested in woodworking. In making that bookcase, I watched a lot of videos on YouTube, kind of looked up a lot of Instagram accounts for woodworkers, just to kind of look at other ways to make things that weren't just, using screws and a drill. And I found out about makerspaces, which are really phenomenal things. The Kansas City Woodworkers Guild being, I think, probably the best. But I live in an apartment, so space is kind of an issue. I don't have a garage. I have nowhere, not only to buy tools, table saws, drill presses, but nowhere to put them. So I was looking into makerspaces, and I'd found out about them because I was working in the library, and they had a makerspace. And they were bragging about their little CNC machine, and I think it was 4 square inches you could kind of CNC. So I just got onto Google, typed in woodworking in Kansas City, and this was the first hit. I found out it was like $95 a year, and I was like, sold. This is a phenomenal shop. It's like a professional cabinet shop here for a really low price, and I was sold. I took a 1-day course, Intro to Box Making, for the rough to ready, and I've been hooked. I've been in since.
How long have you been writing about woodworking?
That's a really new thing for me. I am a writer. That as a profession, so woodworking was kind of a nice way to use my hands without having to think. But I guess it seemed natural to then try and figure out a way to put them together. And I only started doing that at the beginning of this year, kind of with COVID and everybody taking a break, slowing things down. I thought I'd pitch Popular Woodworking, an article submission, kind of an idea. I submit stories to fiction magazines all the time, so I was familiar, and I was like, I'll just take a chance. And I had found out that they had just been purchased by Woodsmith magazine, so it was a really long delay in them getting back to me, and I thought it was going to be a no. But they were really interested in my shaker sewing cabinet. I told them about this great place and said I kind of wanted to highlight it and how I work and where I work, and then it just kind of went from there. I really enjoyed the process. I really like kind of exploring not just build plans, but a little bit of a story along the way. So that's something I hope to continue doing with them. I've been talking with the editors back and forth a little bit. It's been a real experience.
What was the procedure for the writing and photography on your article?
It was it was a little difficult because, you know, I kind of get into, I don't know about everyone else, I'm sure it's probably pretty similar, but I get into a bit of a groove when I'm woodworking, especially if things are going really well, which is not every day, of course, but when they are going really well, I don't really pause to take a picture, even though I do kind of like to do that to show friends and family. So it was a really, really slow process for me to take a step back and make sure that I had to plan every move I was going to make out for this article, especially because it was a hand tool specific article. So I wanted to make sure that I wasn't just saying, grab a hand plane and plane it flush. I wanted to make sure I referenced the right tools, showed proper use. So then, I might spend 6 hours that day in the guild and get maybe 2 hours of work done, and the rest of it was either moving my little tripod or making sure my bench was clean. I took great pains to make sure that my workspace was always pretty tidy for those pictures.
So you took all the photos yourself?
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I worked in the hand tool room, and it's nice and quiet in there. Pretty infrequently, there are other people in there. So I didn't really have an opportunity to ask too many people, hey, would you mind getting a good shot of me while I'm planing this flush? But every once in a while, there were some guild members. Michael Martin was one. He's a real nice guy. He's actually a director, film director, and works with that. So he was kind of generous and helped me play with lighting a little bit more than I was used to. But for the most part, it was just a pretty slow process of getting the wood in a vise, held down, laid out, ready to go, then setting up the tripod, getting the right angle, setting a timer, then picking up my tools, making sure I'm in the right position for the timer, and then if it wasn't, I'd have to start over again.
If you haven't seen his article, there's several good looks at our hand tool room. Can we expect more articles in the future?
Yeah. So I have one coming out, Popular Woodworking celebrating their 40th anniversary here with, I think it's technically the January issue, but they're sending it out in December. And I made a wall cabinet for that article. It's a Krenov-inspired wall cabinet. It takes a look at a pipe cabinet he made in 1968. It kind of shows you how to reproduce as a way to kind of learn design elements and finesse hand tool skills. It's not exclusively a hand tool build, but I think in talking with the editors of Popular Woodworking, they really like looking more at hand tool work or showing, a little bit finer detail rather than just machine work. So I kind of said, this is a repertoire of things I've made. I'd love to make more articles for them, and they seem to be pretty interested. So hopefully next year, a couple more articles. I always get to take nice pictures of the Lee Nielsen cabinet to show off.
Okay. You're also helping teach a class here at the Guild that's a first time for us. It's on hand tool basics. Tell us a bit about that class, please.
Yeah, so Dave Kratz, who's a founding member here, has been instrumental in my progression through woodworking. He became a quick mentor for me. He saw me in the hand tool room using, I think, the planes to not scrape up glue, so he was instantly drawn. So we kind of bonded over that, and he and I've learned a lot from him about hand tool woodworking, and he kind of came to me recently and said, I really think, especially with the article I wrote, I think you know what you're talking about. I'd like to get a group of people together. So it's me, him, Wayne, and Richard are now teaching an introduction to hand tool woodworking, because we have this phenomenal room with all these wonderful tools that I think a lot of woodworkers who come to the Guild are maybe a little bit, not scared of, but a little hesitant to use because, maybe they've never seen them in use before, or maybe no one is around to kind of explain exactly how they're used. And it can be intimidating to say, oh, excuse me, can you spend 30 minutes to show me how to set up a hand plane real quick? That feels a little rude. And I've had enough people ask me what I'm doing while I'm working in the hand tool room, and say, well, it'd be really cool to learn that. That it seemed natural to offer kind of an exploration of hand tool basics, to kind of fit in with the rough to ready, intermediate woodworking, really getting good foundations out here in the cabinet shop, which does also incorporate some hand tool work. But we wanted to really make sure and focus in and look at real traditional methods of joinery and how to make them. So that was it was kind of on the cuff, just invited to do it. It's been real great.
What's the project that they're building?
So our 10-week course is introduction to all the joints, but then we use them all to make a shaker bench, just a nice little shaker bench with through tenons that are wedged to hold the seat, a stretcher, and some arched legs. It's right out of John Cassay's shaker shop drawing books, which is in the library, a phenomenal resource we have as well. But it's got all kinds of great authentic shaker stuff in there, and we just kind of flipped through and found not super easy, because you do have to get your joints right since they all show, but a nice, relatively easy foray into woodworking. So it's going to be a nice little bench.
So is no hand cut dovetail?
No, we are, however, there's none in the project, but the last 2 weeks I get to teach hand-cut dovetails. I'm teaching both through and half-blind dovetails, which is a real treat for me. It's my favorite joint. So.
Yeah. It's time for our final 3 questions, which are 3 simple questions, short answers. May or may not have anything to do with woodworking.
Cool.
Heads or tails first?
I do tails first. I like gang cutting. It saves time.
Favorite Kansas City barbecue?
Oh, Casey Joe's, hands down. I would travel across the country for that.
And do you have a woodworking hero?
Ooh, Dave Kratz, I think. He's my woodworking hero. I think he's a woodworking hero, a local hero at the Guild. So I like to stay local.
All right, thank you, Kenan, for joining us. That's all for this episode. Remember to do all the important things like share, subscribe. If you have a comment, let us know. You can email me at podcast@kcwg.org, or if you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment down below. Thanks as always. I've been your host, Kevin Thomas. And remember to work safe and get your sawdust on. Thank you.
This has been Woodwords the Podcast, a production of the Kansas City Woodworkers Guild, with host Kevin Thomas and producer Chris McCauley.
A special thank you to our guest today, to the Guild's Leadership Committee, and to all of our sponsors.
For more information about the Guild, upcoming classes, and events, please visit our website kcwg.org. You can also find us on social media by searching for Kansas City Woodworkers Guild. And remember to hit the subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications.